Hello everyone and welcome to a studio edition of I Print 3D Minis, and we're talking about things that you need to do 3D printing. And for the most part, we're talking about 3D resin printing, while some of these tools might come in handy for 3D printing in general. One of the first things, of course, you're going to need for 3D printing, other than the resin, is going to be a way to clean it. And I use 91% isopropyl alcohol. If this camera ever focuses, maybe you can read the label. There we go. 91% isopropyl alcohol, or IPA. You can go higher. I don't recommend lower. You definitely want to get yourself a wide assortment of these little hex wrenches or Allen wrenches, whatever you want to call them. They are valuable. You will get one or two with your printers, but you will need one for almost every screw, bolt, nut, piece, build plate, everything. Removing screens, pretty much all requires these things. So yeah, you'll need them, a lot of them. It's always good to keep extra materials, extra equipment around. You want to keep extra build plates in case you strip a bolt, in case the surface becomes damaged or can't hold a print anymore. Things like that. You also may want to keep extra FEPS and VATS handy. You're going to want to get or use the scraper that comes with the printers, and do not use it to clean your vat. Please, Lord, do not use it to clean your vat. The only thing I use this for is to remove burrs. And burrs are little bits of resin that have cured onto the build plate but didn't quite come off when you removed everything else. And this is possible. You can actually get little bits that'll just stick on. So use this plastic edge and just kind of scrape along the top of the build plate and remove it. For your vat, however, you're going to want to use silicone spatulas like these made by KitchenAid here. And no, I'm not plugging these guys. I don't have an affiliate. But these spatulas are great. The little heads come off. You can clean them. They are completely safe inside your vat. They will not scratch your FEP. The edges are smooth. You got one that's like spoon shaped to scoop stuff out. And the other one's more of a spatula shape, which will help you stir your resins when you have not used the vat for a couple of days or so in between prints. So these are invaluable. Can't say how much I use those. You're going to want to get yourself some cups, and this is either to measure resin for actual use, and I don't normally measure my resins using these cups. I just pour it in the vat and use the measuring tabs on the sides of the vats. But these are good if you want to be really rationing of the way you use your resin. This is a great way to do it. You just pour some into this cup and you pour that in your vat. Now you know exactly how much. You have 2 ounces of resin that you've poured. And of course you can store other things in there. You can store alcohol for cleaning and stuff. This is also something you need, UV flashlight. This is a super valuable tool. UV flashlights can help you cure both internal resin that has not cured on a model, like if you hollowed something, or you can use it to cure uncured photoresin if you're doing things like gap filling, seaming, and corrections outside of the print environment. You can use this flashlight in an infinite amount of uses, to say the least, that you can use it to help you with your modeling. It's a great thing to have, and the UV flashlight is definitely an amazing tool for anyone to have for 3D printing. Highly recommended device, for sure. You're also going to want to have a nice sharp X-acto. I also recommend having a bunch of blades on hand. They will go dull on you quite quickly. They seem super sharp, but yeah, get a bunch of blades. You're also going to want to make sure you have some snippers. I highly recommend having 2 pairs of snippers. We call those the dirty pair and the clean pair. One of those is ones you don't mind touching with your contaminated gloves, and the other ones are ones that you would never touch with your contaminated glove, to prevent that from being the dirty one. You're also going to want to secure a paintbrush of sorts, or just an old paintbrush. Doesn't have to be huge. Should be like a small to medium size, and a small toothbrush. These can be used to brush away and remove debris from a model once the support cleaning has been done, And this will allow you to get into the little nooks and crannies and remove those tiny supports and remove that debris away. Very handy tools to have when you're cleaning up your models. Gloves, like the ones I'm wearing, and yes, you should get nitrile gloves. They don't have to be black. The color doesn't really matter. A lot of them do tend to be black for some reason when I look for garage gloves and things like that. One of the ones I use a lot is Raven, but these are pretty good. They're called GloveWorks. These are a little cheaper, but they're not quite as durable. So you get what you pay for. That seems to be the rule with any kind of hardware product. Scrapers. Now these, of course, you'll be using to remove your prints from your build plates. Your printer should have come with one. Yes, eventually the edge is going to get dull and you probably will want to replace one. I have a ton of these because I have a ton of printers, so I haven't yet had to go to a hardware store and buy one, but I know a few folks that have actually gone out of their way to buy their own new ones from the hardware store because they just don't like those. A ruler, preferably one that does both units in centimeters and inches. If you can flip it from side to side, that's the best way. This is an easy conversion system for you, especially when you're working with scales from both America and Europe. Masks. Now this is an N95 3M 8511 mask. This is a pretty tough one, and I only really recommend wearing these when you're working with sanding or heavy amounts of chemical for a long period of time. They don't need to be worn the entire time you're working with your printer. I don't think that's necessary. It's a bit excessive. But when you're working with sanding especially, don't breathe in all that dust. Highly recommend that. Microfiber towels are good for everything. Cleaning up spills, cleaning up resin, cleaning up alcohol, cleaning out your VATS, helping you clean up your printer, pretty much everything. Get yourself a case of these things and just rotate them through the wash. But don't put them through the dryer as it will ruin some of the microfiber usefulness there. So try to let them kind of like, I guess, hang dry. This is a small space heater. I can't remember that. I think it's Andilly. This little tiny thing you would just put near your printers, plug in, and push this little button there, and it will just get to a set temperature. I believe it gets between like 100 and 110, so it's pretty darn hot, but it's not scorching. You're always going to want to make sure that the back panel, however, is free, and there is a little trip sensor on the bottom that will prevent you from catching your house on fire, because it will stop the machine if it tips over. And there's the vent on the back. Just keep it free of dust and debris and stuff like that. So this is when it gets cold. Run that little space heater. Just put that next to your printers, and that will keep them nice and warm. Should keep them warm enough, actually, that you really won't need to worry about the temperature dropping too cold. You're going to want to get a nice pair of tweezers. They don't necessarily have to be like these. You can use blunt-edged ones like this, although some people say that these are better for terrain work. I guess it just really depends. I use them for different purposes. The needle nose ones are better for certain things. These also are the kind of relax release ones where you pinch them to open them, and then by releasing them they hold on to the object, and then they can actually be kind of placed down because it has a little stand on it. So that is kind of handy for those tweezers. If you're just looking for a standard set of tweezers, however, there are just, of course, just a standard needle nose set of tweezers there with your little points, which are pretty standard. And of course, you can also, you get little tongs, little tiny tongs there with little rubber grips, are good for handling parts where you don't necessarily want to apply too much pressure or make a mark on them. Another good set of tools to have is little tiny metal files. These are great for doing quick work on anything you have used putty on. Because putty dries a little different, a little harder, especially milliput. You'll find that you might need to use hard sanding tools on them like these metal tools. And what's great is when you're done, you can simply rinse them in alcohol and they're good to go again. You're also going to want to get yourself a pencil, because you're probably going to want to write some stuff down from time to time. I always forget about that, and I never keep a pencil in my workspace. Oh, and a box cutter. That's going to help you open up all those boxes and resin bottles that you get, because that little seal on the inside is a bugger to get open, and this box cutter is going to help you make short work of that. So trust me, that'll come in more handy than you think. It's not really a 3D printing tool. It's more of a, you're going to need this to open stuff tool. You're also going to need some other tools for finishing and to help you kind of work with the model. One of those is going to be a pin vise or a hand vise or hand drill. And this is simply a drill that you would actually just use with your hand and just hand torque that drill. And this is great for models and small stuff because you don't have to worry about cracking it, breaking it, fracturing it or anything. And it's good if you want to cut a hole in something, if you want to drain. Like if you have a resin trap in a model and you go, oh man, I got some resin stuck in here, I got to drain it out. Or if you have a pressure unequalization where the resin isn't draining from one side of the model and you have to cut another hole into it, this is a great tool to do that with, and it's quick and easy. Make short work of it. You're also going to want to get yourself some sanders, different types. These are simple filing sticks and buffing sponges. The buffing sponges and the filing sticks are actually nail supply stuff. You can get those pretty much anywhere, grocery stores, drugstores. The little sanding sticks here, these tiny ones, you can get at your hobby stores like Hobby Lobby if you have one near you, or other hobby stores. And those are great. They make really short work of all the little tiny bits that get left behind from the 3D printing. And these sponges will make very nice finishing work on all of that sanding work that you put down. So those are great things to have too when you're trying to clean up and finish your model pieces from your 3D printing. One of the other things that you should probably also have on hand, of course, would be some sort of putty. Other than using the resin to do your gap filling and things like that, you can also use a putty like Mr. White Stuff or Milliput. Or sorry, not Mr. White Stuff, Mr. White Putty is what it's called. And obviously, you can still use resin to do your gap filling and your seam filling and things like that. But there are tons of options. You need the UV light if you're going to use the resin, but you don't need that if you're going to use Mr. White Putty or the Milliput. So those are options if you don't want to bother going the route of having to deal with curing the UV. That's it for this episode, guys. If you have any more suggestions for tools or things that you use to 3D print, let us know in the comments. Otherwise, we'll see you all soon. Thanks for watching.